Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. I am your host tonight, Isaac Edlund, and my good friend and fellow Infinity Bro, Mark Jones, joins me tonight. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm glad, as always, to be back to tickle the ears of the Infinity Bros universe.
And tickle the ears of the Infinity Bros universe, you do very well. And you can even hear more on the Patreon version of this episode. You can check out the Infinity Bros Patreon for exclusive access to uncut episodes, bonus content, and even bonus episodes that you can hear and get your earwaves tickled even more by Mark, because Mark you're kind of like, honestly, I feel like you're our Patreon like celebrity. You're on you've been on the only exclusive episode so far. I feel like you are the best part of our Patreon exclusive portion of our podcast, because it is truly unhinged Mark on these unedited episodes. So if you want to hear
regular Mark, it is what it is.
It's regular Mark to us, but it's unhinged to the world because Max censors him quite a bit on our actual podcast. So it is uncensored. And Max just Mark
censors himself.
That, yeah, basically we could go with that too. But anyways, we are here to talk about some big shows that have come out in the past week, and even one on the Patreon exclusive portion that you can hear about is the Rings of Power series that just debuted tonight. We didn't watch that or review that, but we talk a little bit about kind of the roots of the show and, kind of our expectations and all the things that have been going on around that. So if you want to hear a little bit about that, make sure you click on the link in the show notes to check out our Patreon.
So off topic after.
Yeah, we get that was a very wide variety of topics that we went through in that Patreon episode. A lot of different things.
We went far.
It went very different than yours and Robbie's Patreon episode the other day. Very different in a good way, I think, anyways. So, but yeah, if you wanna hang out with us, you can also check out theinfinitybros.com. Here are our latest reviews on the Daily Snap. You can check out our podcast or previous reviews on Apple Podcasts, any other major podcast platform. You can check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and you can catch us streaming on Twitch every once in a while. So those are how you check out the Infinity Bros. We've got a lot to go over because we are going to be reviewing 2 episodes of recent TV. Number 1 is House of the Dragon, episode 2, and number 2 will be She-Hulk, episode 3. So, Mark, if you're cool with it, I say let's just jump right into these bad boys.
Let's do it. All
right. So at Mark's request and my approval and thinking it was a good idea, we're going to be talking about House of the Dragon first. But we do want to give you, the first-time listener, a little idea of how we rate things on the Infinity Bros podcast.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
So now that you know that, Mark, you were on the episode with Robbie when you guys reviewed the first episode of House of the Dragon. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about my review. I won't give a full review, but I would say I absolutely loved that first episode. Thought it was fantastic. And honestly, when I got done watching that episode, I was like full Michael Scott. I'm ready to be heard again. Like, let's do this thing. Like, I'm ready to jump back into the world of Game of Thrones. And man, episode 2, it's got me hyped, honestly. So I would give episode 1. Man, it's hard for me not to give it a 6 out of 6, honestly. Like, there wasn't a whole lot wrong with it. Like, I think I will give it a 6 out of 6. Like, there's just not a whole lot I can say that was negative about it, honestly. So it was a great season premiere. And you guys mentioned it, that this is way more put together than episode 1 of Game of Thrones, because it's like, this is it. Like, they know they've got an audience now. Like, they're going all out. Whereas episode 1 of Game of Thrones is like a true pilot, you mentioned. So there were some, differences, some style changes that they took, throughout that first season. And we're going to chat about episode 2. So, Mark, before we get into spoiler territory, would you mind giving us just like a 60-second review of what you thought of episode 2 of House of the Dragon and rating for us?
Actually, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 6. There's nothing really in this episode I could really, no current complaints that come off the top of my head. I thought we kind of got, added more to the story that really helped see what was coming and what's happening. And kind of just like Game of Thrones, it's literally like a carousel of who's going to screw who, in the sense of like taking over power. And also sometimes the latter, what I just said.
Also that.
But, it's given what the people want. We have dragons. So far in every episode, we've had a dragon or 2 dragons. And it just keeps building onto the lore of what the story they're going to tell us. We finally got to see, what's his name? The crab guy.
Crab master or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever they call him.
Blanking on his name. But yeah, then we're seeing like some division in the circle of, what do they call it? The small council.
Small council.
So, and clearly this king is dealing with some health issues, and then and then in this episode chooses a new wife. And that was kind of like a roller coaster of like who, because there was like 2 options, and one was like,
right.
That's clearly not the right choice because of the person's age. But then the other option is also like, probably still too young.
Yeah. Also,
but like they're going all in. This is like how society was in our time, in medieval times, and like royalty wise, it's like, yeah, they would marry super young, and if a king lost his wife, a 50-year-old probably would marry another royalty member who's probably younger. And anyways, but yeah, that's just getting still overall. And then get more of Rhaenyra just like doing her stuff, and it's like, and what is it after episode 3 or 4 they do the time jump, because that's like the whole thing is like we do a huge time jump where they're like 10 or 20 years older. So
yeah, that'll be interesting to see how they handle that time jump for sure. So I think I'm honestly sitting at about the same spot as you. There's nothing really about this series that I can say negatively. Like, you guys talked about it in the first review episode. They're going all out on production. Like, it looks incredible. I really can't complain about anything. And they're really giving people what they want. They're giving people dragons. They're giving people drama that was all Game of Thrones was about. Like, that's literally what kept us watching Game of Thrones, was who's going to kill who's going to screw who's going to do something to somebody else.
And it's compelling drama, well written and acted greatly. So it's like, all that, it's like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And Robbie mentioned it as well. Like, Game of Thrones was like a stepping stone for some of those actors, like to get like really mainstream popular. Who I think of initially is Maisie Williams, who played Arya Stark. Like, she is like almost a household name now. Like, almost like she's at the burgeoning level of like stardom, where she's like, everybody like knows who she is. So like that's just, I think that's a really cool aspect of them choosing these actors and actresses who we might not have heard of before, and some mixed in there obviously that we have. So
I was just thinking of past Game of Thrones people. I saw a meme today, might have been yesterday, where it says, please don't name your children after the show until the series is completely done.
Yeah, I saw that one too. That's so true. Oh my gosh. If you're any type of Game of Thrones person, you should know to not do that. But
Honestly, if I had a child between like 2014, 2017, great chance a child is probably named after a character in Game of Thrones. So that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. It's a problem. Yeah. God saved you from that fate, Mark. Yeah. But there are some people that name their children some ridiculous things. So Game of Thrones characters, really not the worst thing to name them after, honestly. Like, there are some cool names. So and in the show we talk about the Targaryens, and they have a lot of very, very unique, interesting names. So but yeah, I think I would give this a 6 out of 6. I would say both of these, and hopefully the next couple episodes, are all building episodes. So like, action wise, there's not, I mean, we get a little bit of action in episode 1, but action wise, there's not a ton in this episode. It's more of like, it's building the story,
dialogue,
which is fine with me. I don't have any issue with that at all. I thought it was a
my
fine
only
episode.
Disappointment is I didn't get enough Daemon Targaryen.
You want more Daemon? I could tell that. I could tell that you are a Daemon guy for sure.
Yeah, that dude, like, man.
Matt Smith
is
a great casting. Yeah.
When I first realized who it was, like, I should have said, oh, it's, one of the doctors from Doctor Who. But I was like, that's the guy from Morbius.
That's exactly what I thought too. Like, I know he's the doctor, but I've never watched Doctor Who. So when I saw him immediately, I was like, that's the guy from Morbius. Like, what the heck? Oh my gosh.
There's not a more perfect casting. So it's like, I just hope they keep playing into like that. Oh, anyways, I'm speechless. I just love it.
He's great. And man, they're doing such a great job. And we should probably, let's stop. I'm going to stop talking. Let's give a spoiler warning right here.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
So Daemon is obviously, like, if not a main, you can't even really say protagonist or antagonist because you don't really know at this point, but like, he's a main character, slightly step beneath, Rhaenyra probably. But like, he's obviously very important. And they're doing such a great job of playing him like Game of Thrones wise. Like, you don't really know what direction he's taking at this point.
Well,
you can't say he's a straight up antagonist right now.
I feel like they're trying to make us think that he's an overall bad guy.
Right.
But I think at the end of the series, we're going to be like, no, this dude was the good guy. This dude was doing his best to make sure, or I mean, maybe he might be a good guy to a point where like he is looking out for himself, but more of like his house and his family.
Yeah.
Because, I think he totally sees through Otto Hightower.
Right.
And like, what happens? What was Otto's plan if, like, it's totally jumping into the episode. Because Rhaenyra gets there's a message sent that Daemon's gonna get married. He stole a dragon egg, all that stuff, and invites the king to his wedding. But like, Hightower's like, nope, you're not going, king. I'll go in your stead. And like, brings an army. And then we kind of learned that the gold cloaks came with Daemon. So clearly he has loyalty, built into these gold cloaks. So it's like, what was his plan? Was he planning to like there's just so much seediness going on with Hightower. I think Hightower, clearly, but yeah.
Yeah. And this episode was definitely more revealing that Otto is up to something. Like, last episode, before I listened to you guys talk about it, I did not think Otto was like, I didn't get bad vibes from him. Like, sure, he was like seedy in a general Game of Thrones sense, like kind of looking out for himself. But like, I thought he was like on the king's side, like legitimately. And when you guys said that, I was like, oh, you know what? I can kind of see that. Like, so to your credit, Mark, like, I mean, you called it episode 1, like Otto Hightower is up to something, and he obviously is trying to uproot and potentially gain the throne for himself, which
or undermine the whole house of Targaryen.
Right, exactly. At this time, this is peacetime. Like, there hasn't been war for decades, if not generations, maybe. Episode. Right.
Yep. Because they Rhaenyra pick the soldier or the knight that's gonna guard her father, the king.
Right.
And she asked, out of all these, she's presented a bunch of knights, even in front of Otto Hightower, and then like her personal guard, like who should, she's debating who she picks, and she asked like, well, who's actually seen battle? And there was only one guy, and it was the guy who knocked Daemon off his horse in the previous episode. So like she chose him, and Hightower goes into the whole like, well, you should choose someone that like has like alliance to the house, which like I get, that's strategic, but clearly Rhaenyra sees and maybe has a feeling that no, my dad needs an actual like dude that's going to be able to protect him. So it'll be interesting how that plans out too. And
like not being intertwined with a house potentially that is vying for the throne too. Like exactly. I'm sure she sees that, which.
So no Game of Thrones for that guy.
Yeah, no Game of Thrones it exactly. So, but like, yeah, Otto sees that and he's like, I've gotten in probably with these other houses. Like I could maybe convince them to be on my side were something to happen, and I could potentially, make a move at some point. But yeah, it is interesting to point out that this is like peacetime. Nobody public wise really is expecting anything to happen. I granted, this is Game of Thrones, so maybe these people are like literally anything could happen at any time, and any house could uproot one another. But you would think that with years of peacetime, people are like content and like, hey, this is just the way it is. So interesting distinction. Otto Hightower is definitely up to something for sure. So one scene that I do want to kind of point out specifically is, so we've got Rhaenys and Corlys Valerian. Rhaenys was, in line for the throne before it was given to Viserys.
Or no, not in line, but like the pledge to be the next ruler, right?
Sure. Yeah, but she was like in the list of names that they were like, all right, these people could be.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, yes.
Right. So she was
the whole thing. They made a claim for the throne, but they weren't necessarily in line because he had
exactly. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So they suggest that Viserys marries their daughter, who is like 12 and really weird and creepy. But anyways, like when this is happening, Rhaenyra is noticing this, and they have a conversation, Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, and Rhaenys basically is like, this is all a farce. Like they're not going to let you be queen. Like you're going to be replaced by a male at some point, because she went through that already. She was like, probably had her hopes high because she was lineage wise the closest to being, the queen, but they instead chose Viserys at that time. So like she basically is like, you're going to get screwed out of your position there. Sorry to say. Well, so she's kind of like just, warning her. So it's kind of like almost an Rhaenyra
make a comment to her uncle when she goes to him, like, are you just going to kill me to take your succession?
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That is. Yeah. She, when she goes to get the dragon egg, which that scene is pretty epic in and of itself as well. She says something to the effect of like, all right, just kill me and claim your line or whatever. But yeah, so she knows that she's got pull right now, but she also she's like what, like 14 or 15 16, or something? I think 16. So she is
16, I think.
She's, I would say she's relatively naive. So she's kind of listening to everybody say whatever around her and like kind of believing it.
And not knowing at this point when to not say something.
Right. Exactly.
But she's still in that phase where she'll just say whatever comes to her head. I think any teenager probably would, versus like having the maturity to be like, no, this is not the right time to have.
Right. This may not benefit me to say this right now. And so fast forward to Game of Thrones. Cersei becomes queen. Gosh, I would have to rewatch that whole series to get a good grasp on the timeline again. But Cersei becomes queen, and this is like still abnormal for a queen to be ruling during the time of Game of Thrones. So this is 200 years back. It's probably set in stone that this is like, wow, this is like way crazy that they would even consider her to be a main heir for the throne. So, I mean, I think there's some significance here, and I am very intrigued to see if she at some point gains control of the Iron Throne, or this is all just her being tossed around by all the powers that be.
And that's
so. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought about that today. It's like, did we get in the first first season in Game of Thrones that Cersei was the first queen? Like
That's
overall
a great
ruler?
Question. Yeah, I would have to go back.
Clearly, there was other queens, but she was fully in command.
Right.
She was treated as the king.
Right.
Yeah, because that was my thought. It's like, because if that was ever mentioned, then we kind of know that never happens. But granted, there's 172 years between these, or at least between the birth of
Daenerys. So there could be just like a loss of, knowledge, basically.
Just how like dragons never existed to some people, or it's like that's a folklore. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting, really interesting. So go back to that scene that Rhaenyra comes on Dragonback to basically save Otto Hightower and his men from Daemon. So Otto Hightower, like you mentioned it before, he's got to be trying to make a move here, right? Like I'm sure he's probably, because he knows that Daemon is the biggest threat to his power, potentially making a move on the throne, because Daemon would obviously back his brother if anything were to happen, or just try to take stuff for himself. Maybe we've learned in the last 2 episodes that Daemon has had opportunities to, like you guys mentioned in that first episode with the tournament. Like I am totally on your side, Mark. I thought he was gonna just take down, like stab, I think it's Sir Cole was the knight that beat him. I thought he was totally gonna stab him when he was like getting his thing from,
like, cut his leg, get on top of him, because he never did the shake the hand, really gave like a verbal and like a big motion to surrender. He gave a little head nod where it's like, okay, he gives a little head nod, but maybe no one sees it, and then he like cuts the dude's leg, gets on top of him, and stabs him in the face.
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen.
And they shot it like that. They shot it like we just expected that as an audience. So that's another like gold star for House Dragon.
And in this one too, like in this interaction, I fully expected Daemon to start fighting Otto and his dudes, but I mean, Rhaenyra stops that, obviously, but like it's kind of another like swerve. Like, all right, maybe Daemon isn't the bloodthirsty killer that they're kind of portraying him as, like, and I totally think you just hit the nail on the head with that with last episode. I think they are going to try to swerve us at some point and be like, oh, Daemon's actually the good guy, or one of the good guys in this story. So that's really interesting. And one thing that I thought was funny was just how flippant he was being with the egg. Like,
right.
One of my thoughts was like, it's a dragon egg. It's probably like unbreakable, maybe, like, and that's why he's being so flippant with it. But like, he literally chucks the egg to Rhaenyra at the end of that interaction. And I was like, that is so interesting for a dude who is living in Dragonstone, banking on dragons, to be on his side. I just was like, oh, that's interesting. He obviously knows Rhaenyra is like in with the dragons as well. So like he kind of, has that in common with her. Maybe we haven't seen him ride a dragon though. So maybe he isn't a dragon rider like Rhaenyra is.
But there was a dragon at Dragonstone. So, like, whose dragon was that? If
right,
not his?
Exactly. You would think that it was his. Maybe it was a dragon that's just assigned to guard Dragonstone.
That's another thing. I feel like the wife's been brought up, his first wife, because in this episode he's trying to marry
the wife from the Vale.
Myra was her name, or I forget. Yeah, but yes, the one that was from.
Yeah, the one that got like assigned to him to basically like keep him out of trouble, type of thing, like keep him away from the capital. So yeah, that is interesting. There's a lot of working cogs in this episode that we see, but we're again, it's kind of slow moving. Totally fine. in my opinion. I love that we're building up to something bigger, because not everything needs to be like action 100% of the time. But we're getting dragons still. So like, hey,
we get a dragon every
totally
episode. That keeps the 10 million of us happy.
Exactly. Man, the numbers on this are just boggling. I cannot
I heard
believe
it went up 2% from last week in viewership. So, which is good. So it'll be interesting if it holds that episode 3, where like people clearly are really digging this show. So, and I would assume it will keep doing it, because it's shot anyways. Like shot well is like there's a real dragon in real life that they shot, but like just done well. The CGI looks good. Everything looks great. So
okay, so at the end of this episode, they kind of, it's not really a swerve. Like we kind of see it coming, but like King Viserys decides that he's going to marry Alicent Hightower, which is Otto's daughter, who has been, seeing him, and she
on the request of Otto Hightower.
On the request of Otto Hightower, exactly. So that's what makes you know that he's like pulling strings here, like, and we don't quite know if Alicent obviously is like pretty obedient to her father. Yeah, naive might be a better word for it.
Naive and obedient.
Yeah. Right. She's doing what he wants. It's hard to tell if she knows like his intentions behind this.
I think he does, because there was like I just go back to the first episode when he's like, wear one of your mother's like gowns or whatever. She kind of had that face like, oh, okay. Like, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I definitely think she's catching on to it, or is she fully in on it? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Right. She at least kind of like has a like, oh boy, like this is kind of what's happening, I guess. But she either doesn't want to or doesn't have, she's not brave enough to like stand up to her dad and be like, all right, like, I don't want to do this. This is wrong. And
maybe we'll get that in episode 3 where she's like really against it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't seem like it's heading that way, but I mean, they love to just pull the rug out from under us in Game of Thrones. So,
and it'll be interesting
who
what
knows?
Corlys does if like they go back, if they're like, no, if we're just done, we're gonna go back to Valeria.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they've got their own issue. Corlys has his own issues with the crab feeder guy.
Because that's another part where like at the end of the episode where he goes to Daemon to ask for help for this, because we get this whole scene at the end too, where like this dude is just like ravaging this shore and apparently has the ability to, he's like, can control crabs.
Summon crabs.
But then looks super, like whatever character we saw at the end, looks super weird and deformed. So it's like, oh, where are we going with this? So
right, I know that was a very interesting like final scene that was like, because how are they going to handle this? Because Corlys has obviously been trying to get Viserys to handle this for these whole 2 episodes, but he's like, like whatever, we'll get around to it when we do. Corlys, he said in this episode, this is impacting his whole house basically, because they're making their fortune. They're one of the wealthiest houses, it's mentioned, and they are made that wealth from the shipping routes that this guy is impeding right now. So like Corlys is losing out on a bunch. And he, as the wealthiest house, I would assume that he is a pretty big part of the 7 kingdoms or whatever, Westeros. So I mean, they're going to have to handle this somehow. Is Corlys going to try to do it himself, or is Viserys finally going to be like, all right?
And Game of Thrones, like there's not a lot of people from like a lot of talk about Valeria besides Valyrian steel.
Right. Yeah. Cause that's like, it's kind of one of those things that's like the same with the dragons, where it's kind of like lost from memory almost. Like it's still there. There's remnants of things like there's still some Valyrian steel around, but nobody really talks about like Valyrian, the house of Valyrian. So yeah, interesting. And they are going into kind of a little bit of, what happened prior to this show with like, they talk about old Valyria quite a bit, and how it was this, massive empire. And I mean, King Viserys even says like, we'll never come to the height of old Valyria, basically. So yeah, it's really interesting. I love that they're going deep diving into the lore of this like world. And so that this is based on a book. Have you read this book, Mark? The House of the Dragon?
Haven't, but it is an Audible book I have. So okay,
you're planning on. I think I probably need to get around to reading both Song of Fire and Ice and this, because like the more I get into the lore of this, I mean, George R.R. Martin does a fantastic job of world building. Like, dude obviously has a vision, even if he doesn't have the drive to finish his book series.
I've now come to the conclusion that he didn't finish that because he was involved, after talking with Robbie more about it, that he wasn't involved with the last season with producing it. Yeah. And it was just out of like the whole loop of it, where he's like, I'm going to wait until people forget or it really dies down before he releases that. I'm guessing
that's probably not a terrible idea, because like people were very, very upset by the last season.
Because people, I would say probably a good chunk of people would still think like, oh, they're going to associate how that book ends with the show and not realize that like after season, the like second to last season was kind of the ending of his stories, and the last two seasons of Game of Thrones were these writers who clearly needed his stories to actually tell a story. So
yeah, right. So yeah, I think that's interesting, and I'm intrigued as to how much lore George R.R. Martin has built in this world, and I think from what I've seen in the show, both this and Game of Thrones, it looks incredible. So I'm definitely more intrigued to kind of dig into that a little bit for sure. So I think they're doing a fantastic job. And sure, it hasn't been like this mind blowing. I haven't been like, this is the best show I've ever watched in my entire life type of thing. But I think they're going to build up to something pretty awesome by the end of this. So one more question.
I'm just agreeing with that, because it's like, it's just done very well. It hasn't had a mind blowing experience where it becomes like a top tier, like God tier, like show.
God tier. Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It's a great show.
And I think there's been a shift in our society on social media, probably more so than anything else. But like, I feel like nowadays we consume media and expect everything to be just the best every single time. And when it's not, so many people automatically go to it's not good. It's a bad show.
It's not exactly how I thought it would be, so it's bad.
Exactly. So like, I mean, the people, I think the big thing started with like maybe even back during the prequel area, honestly, of Star Wars. Like there were so many people. I can speak to the sequel series more so because I was like an active presence online during the sequel series, but like people tear that thing apart. And sure, they're not the best movies in the world, but it's Star Wars and they were fun movies. Like, I don't understand why every single person on the internet all of a sudden thinks they're a movie critic and needs to critique every single thing about every movie to the point of not enjoying it anymore. Like, you can still get enjoyment out of stuff that's not perfect.
And people who don't like things have the loudest voice on the internet. So
that's true. Yeah, that's really how it is. So, okay, one more question before we kind of move on to She-Hulk here. Do you have a very, very, very early prediction as to who is going to be sitting on the Iron Throne at the end of this series?
See, like my mind wants to say, well, it's a Targaryen, because a Targaryen is who's murdered because of Jaime in Game of Thrones. So I would just like, my mind was like, oh, I assume Targaryen will rule for 172 years, which could still happen. But like right now, my money when the show is done, I'm just gonna say season. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna say the season's done. I'm gonna say right as of now, it will be Daemon will be on the throne. Because I'm assuming Viserys will die or be killed before the season's done. Like either died because of his wounds. Because that was the other thing. He had the freaking maggots eating his like finger wound.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about that.
Which I'm like, why didn't he just put his one pinky in there? Why the whole hand? Ugh.
Yeah, right. It's so nasty. Oh gosh. Yeah, maggots are so gross.
Who do you think it's going to be?
Okay, so here's my thought. So we're going to get this time jump, right? Maybe in between episode 3 and 4 or 4 and 5, somewhere in there.
What do you think is going to happen between episodes or in the middle of an episode?
That's a great question. We might get like a little tease of the older versions at the end of one of these episodes, episode 3 or episode 4.
And my prediction was at the end of the season, not in the middle of the season.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's a fair point to make. I think somebody else is going to get a hold of the throne before the time jump. We're going to move 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, years in the future. And that person is still going to be, or that line or whatever is still going to be on the throne. And at this point, it seems like it's going to be Otto Hightower, because I think they're setting him up to be obviously like the villain or the bad guy. And then at the end of the season, with all of the things that we've introduced now, it's hard not to say Daemon. I think I'm with you on that. Like, I think Rhaenyra might actually sit on the Iron Throne and like be the like queen for a little bit. But I think just with the culture of the time, people aren't going to be happy with it, and that they're going to eventually have, Daemon or another male Targaryen at the end of this. Daemon is obviously the most likely at this point because we don't have any other male Targaryens that like you're right. Viserys is probably going to die in that time jump, I bet. Or even before that. He might die before that. Yeah. Maybe they assassinate him and that's how Otto takes the throne. I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm on the same track with you. Daemon or another male Targaryen, I think, is going to be on the throne at the end of this. So hit us up with your thoughts on House of the Dragon episode 2. You can join the Infinity Bros universe on Discord, or you can shoot us an email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. All right, Mark, are you ready to jump into She-Hulk episode 3?
Ready.
All right, let's do it.
Look, I get it, you're lazy, and coffee from the grocery store is just as good as ordering from somewhere like Mini World's Tavern, right? Wrong! That's dumb, and you should feel so dumb for thinking that. Does your local grocery store donate a portion of their proceeds to charity? Actually, if they do that, that is kind of awesome. But we guarantee that Mini World's Tavern does that! Besides, it's not like your grocery store provides an amazing monthly blend with added RPG-themed bonuses. That's a limited edition Mini World's Tavern exclusive, baby. They are the online coffee brand that's perfect for game night. Guys, I should know. Before every podcast and every time I go live on Twitch, I fill an entire bathtub full of Great Old One, and I do my best Lord Harkonnen impression. Guys, grab a bag for yourself right now. Go to www.miniworldstavern.com/theinfinitybros, all one word. And guess what? You're going to save yourself 10% at checkout.
Let's go ahead and give your, again, quick thoughts on She-Hulk episode 3 and a rating just right off the bat.
I don't think I've laughed more during watching a series like the first 3 episodes than any other Marvel movie or show or movie. It's just been good. It's been a fun time. It's not top notch like WandaVision. Looks at Max.
Max is just fuming right now that you just mentioned WandaVision. He doesn't even know that he's not even listening to the podcast. He just this moment, just somebody mentioned it and you just sense it. He's just sense it furious.
I don't know if I still struggle. Is the CGI just not up to snuff, or is it just totally different seeing She-Hulk as a green giant woman, but fully clothed all the time? I'm not saying she has to be nude, but you see Hulk and he's he just has shorts on, so you get more of him. So it's okay, yeah, so it's how the Hulk, and that's what the Hulk looks like. So that's just more in our brain because the Hulk's just been thrown on the screen more than She-Hulk has in our past growing up.
Right. Well, I mean, hey,
but I still love it. I give my rating 5.5 out of 6. Like I loved the episode. I loved what they did. I'm all behind the Abomination and Blansky. Like literally, my whole mind was like changed last episode when they're like, that dude's right. It wasn't his fault. He was hired by the government to hunt down Hulk, given some experimental drug.
This is his job
without any supervision or any warning what it might be. Just given it, and then like becomes the Abomination and destroys a lot of stuff. And who gets blamed? Who gets solely blamed for it? Him. No responsibility taken by General Ross.
The government. Right. He was the fall guy.
Yeah, and clearly he's going to become a Thunderbolt, so that'll be another thing. And then Wong being involved in this episode, and like her breaking the fourth wall about Wong cameo, but you know.
Oh my gosh.
It was great. It's so fun. And I know I watched it with my beautiful wife, Kelly, and she is still hung up on, and no, I would support this belief. They made her, like, she's very like, why did they make her look so different and so busty and like totally sexualize her versus like toning that down? And like she said, this would be like a perfect show for me. But like she said, when she hulks, that's what ruins it for her. And I get it.
I think that's a valid criticism, but I think they're doing that on purpose. Honestly, man, why do I keep making up words for the podcast?
I'm sure Disney execs said sex sells, and that's what they're gonna push. So
I don't even think it's, well, yeah, you're right. That's part of it. The other part of it is that Max mentioned is that like in the comics, that's literally how it is. Like she uses her sexuality.
Yeah.
And it's very evident in the comics. So I think it's naive to say that's the only reason they're doing it is for comic accuracy. Like obviously they're doing it for, well,
not making her more muscular too. Cause like in the comics, she's also, yes to what you're saying, but also a lot more muscular, not like
right.
toned.
And that's also a fair criticism, I think. So, but anyways, I think that's my 2 cents on it. Is it wrong? Is it bad? I won't say one way or the other. I guess I'm not like opposed to it. I'm not like, yeah, let's do it.
Isaac confirmed that he's just in love with the She-Hulk look. That's what.
No. That's Robbie.
No, not me. It's Robbie. Right? No.
Robbie's in love with the She-Hulk. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I thought this episode was hilarious. Just an overall good time. Like this is getting back to the roots of what Marvel TV should be like. Like this is what I think this is what it should be like. I just minor hung up on the CGI a tiny bit, like I have been in previous episodes, but it's nothing that's going to make me say
ruin the experience for me.
Right. It's nothing that's going to make me say I don't like this show or I'm not going to watch this anymore. And I think I ragged on episode 2 that it was so short, maybe a little bit too much, because I actually really am enjoying the episodic like nature of this show. And I think Marvel should get back to that, because frankly, the 6 episode series that they kind of got in a routine of doing that were just, 5 or 6 hour movies that they cut up into 6 different parts. They just weren't cutting it for me. And I really enjoy how they're handling this show. So overall, I'd say 5.5 out of 6 as well for me. I think it's a great show. I'm really excited for the future of this show. And they're just honestly getting started. Like I think this show is just it's a like kind of, I don't know, slap in the face is the right word, but it's like Marvel laughing in the face to everybody who is mad at them for not being good enough cinema. Like this is Marvel having fun. Like, and you can almost say that about phase 4 in general. Like they've been experimenting. This
is the fun phase. This is where we're figuring it out.
This is the fun phase. Exactly.
We're trying to figure out who we are as a person.
One part in phase 4 specifically that I was drawn back to. So obviously, okay, so we're getting into spoilers for She-Hulk. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it.
We already gave you the spoiler warning 30 minutes ago.
It's already there. So the post-credit scene, we get She-Hulk twerking with oh my gosh, it was hilarious. And I know there's people on the internet that are like, oh, this is so dumb, dumbest post-credit scene ever, I hate this. Marvel, what has Marvel become?
Remember when post-credit scenes like meant something?
When they meant something, oh my gosh. But that just brought me back to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, when they did the post-credit scene of Bruce Campbell finally stopping hitting himself. Like that, I thought that was hilarious. Like, come on, like that's just funny. That's just funny stuff.
Or was it the first Spider-Man movie where they did like those Captain America like inform like videos where it's just like he does this thing, pulls up, he's like, did you expect something more? Like, you know, they've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're just messing with these people who are trying to dunk on them at this point. And I love that. I think Marvel, do your thing, Marvel. Like, if you want to be funny, do it. If you want to be...
they were pretty meta when they did, thinking about that, when they, like, did the list of, like, when I'm blanking what part it was, but there was, like, a scene where one of the guys, they're, like, doing... I'm sorry, I can't even collect my thoughts right now. The guy was commenting that he would hit that in reference to She-Hulk.
Yeah, right.
But prior to that, there was like, you know, a list of like, you know, when people were just, you know, really blowing up She-Hulk, like, oh, everything has to be female.
Oh my gosh, there's a total meta thing. That's exactly what people are saying about She-Hulk the show, and they said it in the episode. It was like, oh my gosh, how spot on is this?
Well, it's funny. It's like She-Hulk is a female character. It's different if they gender swapped. For like that's where that gripe
it's would come so funny. Like Marvel is doing like the meta.
They're on point. They're on point with this. You're
series. Right. The meta narrative of She-Hulk is coming through in this show, and I love that. Like that's what makes this show hilarious to me. So that part was incredible. You're right. That I'm glad you mentioned that, because that I got a good kick out of that. Like reel. It was just like people online literally sharing their opinions. The exact same thing that people are saying about this She-Hulk show online right now. It was fantastic.
All right, and so they keep jumping around this episode, because I'm sure this is just what it'll be for episode 3 of She-Hulk.
And that's fine.
How much more are you now confirming that Wong is a skrull?
Dude, I was going to bring that up later.
When he made the comment about, oh, you know, we're doing the fights, when they're referring to like him fighting Abomination and Shang-Chi, that like, oh, I needed to up my sorcery powers.
I know.
This dude is a skrull, and Doctor Strange doesn't even see it as Doctor Strange a skrull. Like, so
maybe
I looked at my before Kelly. I'm like, if he's not a skrull, then
he was so goofy in this episode, and weird. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh my! And we've mentioned it on previous episodes of the Infinity Wars podcast.
I also wouldn't be surprised if we find out Blansky is also a skrull.
Maybe.
And that would maybe explain why his ears look different, because maybe he didn't see him fully formed and just saw.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. Who knows? But anyways, like that would totally explain how he's been acting just kind of like goofy in this show, and even in Doctor Strange a little bit, honestly. Like I know Max rags on how he hates Wong's portrayal in Multiverse of Madness.
I think. And he's right. Like, yeah, if you're not in the mindset that Wong might be a skrull, yeah, it would be kind of suck. Right. So it's like, it'll be interesting to make that payoff. Even with Hulk, if we find out Hulk is, you know, we get World War Hulk back, or you know, Crazy Hulk, or whatever. Right. But I was also thinking like, oh, so it's like, oh yeah, she'll just ask Hulk to get information about the sorcerer. And I'm like, oh yeah, they already did that last episode. The show is that Hulk's no longer on planet, so she can't reference Bruce on anything related to superheroes.
Right. Like, just, they're doing an incredible job with this show. And with Daredevil coming up, with, you know,
how much lose your mind? How much mind will you lose when Daredevil shows up?
My mind will be completely lost when Daredevil shows up in the show.
Do you think they're going to make, if they're bringing Daredevil and all that crew back, are they going to make She-Hulk a ground level adventure? Or let's fight Kang in space or Quantum Realm adventure?
I think she's going to have a very unique status in the MCU after this show, because she's almost kind of corporate street level if that makes sense. Like she's going to be
corporate
dealing
Avenger. She's
she's
going to
be
battle
dealing with, and
she's going to have fight for small businesses.
She'll have to be an Avenger at some point, because like eventually it's going to come down to what it always will be, is that the Avengers and everybody on the face of the planet has to fight this.
Avengers assemble. We'll all try again.
They'll have to fight this cosmic level threat that's going to destroy the world. Blah 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 blah. All like
or
it's
Earth
going
level
to come.
Threat. It could still be an Earth level threat.
Sure. It could be Earth level threat. But anyways, it's going to come down to that. So she
will just be Earth level because he only cares about what's happening with those people. So, but I'll leave my words if it's a cosmic thing. I
think there's going to be an aspect of cosmic to it, because you don't mention incursions without it being. I mean,
you're right.
Again,
you're right.
The incursions are more relative to, like, sure, they're whole universes that are on top of each other or whatever, but also they're more concerned. Any of the people involved in incursions are concerned about their world colliding with the other world. It's not like necessarily, hey, save the universe, because the universe is going to be, so, but there is an aspect of like incursions that are like, okay, this is more than just like this Earth, what's happening right now. So there's a little aspect of cosmic to it, but I think especially with Daredevil coming down the line, street level, and with Spider-Man, like now being a no name again, anonymous, there's going to be a focus on street level in this next phase of the MCU. And I'm 100% down for that. Like seeing Daredevil and Spider-Man be faces of the MCU again.
Could you imagine if a lot of Born Again is like Daredevil and Spider-Man teaming up? Or like that's the whole concept of Daredevil, is Daredevil teaming up with like Spider-Man, teaming up with Punisher, teaming up with Elektra, teaming up with Power Man or Power.
We've already gotten big time rumors and these are big time rumors because they've been leaked by. That's what I was just gonna. They've been leaked by pretty proficient leaker accounts on Twitter. So they're not like official statements by anybody, but they're probably right 99% of the time.
They're probably ran by someone paid by Disney. That's what I always think with like the ones I know what you're talking about. Like the ones that are like, it just seems weird that these are always leaked from this site.
And it's just some random no-name account.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, from those accounts, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and the Punisher are all going to be
and not the Immortal
Daredevil Born Again. That hasn't come up, and that doesn't surprise me because nobody liked that show. So
because Hulk will become the Immortal Iron Fist.
Hulk will become. Oh my gosh!
Could you imagine if they did that? I think people would love it. It'd be awesome.
I think that would be hilarious. But Max mentioned that Shang-Chi was going to be the Immortal Iron Fist, and I was like, so he's going to have the Immortal Iron Fist and the 10 Rings of Power? Like that? That's pretty legit.
In all fairness, they muted the 10 Rings powers.
Sure.
So if those are the actual 10 rings that were going to be like given, not like rings on your hands, where like it actually gave you like cosmic powers, I would say I'm all for it, because then it's
they seem more of like an energy gathering weapon
versus like an altering weapon.
Right, exactly. So okay, I could roll with that. And Shang-Chi would be like the perfect character for that, because obviously like he knows the whole mythos and he's the best at kung fu probably in the MCU. So just how it goes. But anyways, like She-Hulk, great episode. One part in particular that I thought was hilarious, they're just going with the goofy vibe, and I absolutely love it. Like the shape-shifting elf, like Asgardian elf, that was a main part of this episode.
That basically catfished a dude. And she's like, do you think, because who was the singer again that they
it was Megan Thee Stallion.
There you go. And she's like, you really think Megan Thee Stallion's driving Passat or something like that?
Yeah. And Megan Thee Stallion is in the courtroom like, yeah, all right, let's go. Yeah. Like just yelling stuff out, like it was so goofy, but it was so funny. I could not like laugh. It works. Yeah, it's so funny. The like I thought it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of a weird vibe until the Asgardian elf lady went up and started impersonating the judge and like rapping the gavel. After that, I was like, okay, this is hilarious. Like this is funny. I don't care what you say. That's really funny. But yeah, I definitely could see a lot of people being like, oh, this is classic Marvel.
Too silly.
It's too funny. Oh my gosh.
Why can't it be serious? Why couldn't the elf have tried to murder him?
This is the meta of the show, guys. Like, She-Hulk is a funny character.
It's supposed to be
this
on
is
the
just
nose.
how it's going to go. Okay, so get used to it or stop watching. Like, nobody's forcing you to watch these episodes, guys. Like,
but Isaac,
believe
remember
it or
what
not,
I said before. People, just like I said in the Patreon, that's where I said it. People need to complain about stuff, so they need to go watch it so they can go complain because that's their identity. So,
yeah, that's what it's come down to. It's either you're MCU shill and you love every single thing that they do, or you're somebody who hates everything that Marvel does at this point. So there's like no in between. Like it's a mega conglomerate that needs to come down. They're just rooting superheroes for everybody. Just there's no in between.
No,
it's
on the nose. I gotta interrupt and be on my phone. I know we talked about the Patreon how you can't be on the phone. Max has shared in our group chat a meme of the dominoes where it's usually something very serious at the beginning, and the back it's like not as serious. Where it's Tony Stark gets kidnapped by terrorists. The little domino, the big domino on the back says She-Hulk backing that thing up. Tony Stark had to walk so She-Hulk could run.
So She-Hulk could run. Exactly. This is where we're at now. Like, this is where we've come full circle to
what I really love to go more on the show. It's like what I really love is like the show as itself has a personality, and then Jennifer Walters has such a differing personality than the rest, which I think will, in the end of the day, when she's involved in these more serious events, might cater to like how does her character change throughout her story. So and
up to this point, Jennifer Walters has allowed her lawyer self to be her personality. Like that's who she is up to this point. But you see at the end of the episode when she takes out the wrecking crew with no issue whatsoever, just
with Asgardian imprinted equipment too.
Yeah, they've got the Asgardian.
She says, "Did you rob
artifacts.
an Asgardian
They're like
worker?" Yeah. But clearly, they must have been working for someone else because they tried to take her blood. That's what that one thing was. I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely somebody behind that
because they set that up where you saw the whole thing. And I don't remember if she saw what it was. So, like, does she know that she...
Yeah, it didn't really seem like she kind of just shrugged it off. So she might not have realized what they were actually trying to do. Trying to take her blood. Because that was what we got. That's what we got in the first episode where Bruce was so concerned about not getting your blood out there. Getting the blood.
So someone's out there trying to get her blood. And that's, we'll figure that out. Maybe it's AIM. Maybe AIM's going after her. Who knows? Ooh,
okay. That'd be interesting. Because
think about it. To get off a little in the weeds, if we're getting AIM and Ant-Man, we might, or at least MODOK, we might need to get a little AIM teaser before that
MODOK,
happens.
yeah, exactly.
We don't need MODOK, just AIM. Because we know what happens.
Then it's a teaser enough, exactly. Yep. And I'm fine with that. Like, I don't know, we kind of complained a little bit in Phase 4 that none of these shows were connecting. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Though. Right. Yeah. No, that was the point after Endgame.
Everyone got disconnected, got disassembled.
Yeah.
And the only people that are really together that we've seen are Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or Bucky. And at least we know Hulk, Wong, and Captain Marvel have been talking, and now have Shang-Chi involved.
So there's that's kind of loose connections, right? But nothing.
Nothing interconnecting the big masses where you guys this is just setting up that no one is talking to each other and something big's going to come up that's going to surprise everybody. And then there's got to be a moment like, what's his face? The gold guy. he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah, Adam Warlock.
Warlock will, maybe they'll do what he did in the comics for the Infinity Gems.
Yeah.
To get everyone together. That's what his role be in this phase, is to get everyone together to fight something cosmically, as Isaac says.
I love getting into the weeds with you, Mark.
There it is.
I love it.
Went from She-Hulk to AIM to MODOK to what's going to happen to Adam Warlock. Yeah.
Oh, man. Can't wait. She-Hulk just bringing out the best in Mark Jones on the Infinity Bros podcast.
And then we also got the trial for Blonsky. That's another thing.
Yeah,
in this episode.
trial for Blonsky. And by the way,
a followers of pen pals.
The pen pals. Oh my gosh. When he said that, oh my gosh.
We're going to financially support him on his farm.
Yeah. Having Tim Roth back as Emil Blonsky was a brilliant move by Marvel. Like that just like everything kind of just is coming together. And I was before we kind of went off on the weed tangent there, I was going to say that like the connection aspect of Phase 4 wasn't there because they're introducing all these characters, but I think we're going to see a lot more of that starting in this series, obviously, because we've got Abomination, we've got Daredevil coming in this show. And then like in the future of Phase 5, we're going to see a lot more of that interconnectivity within the MCU between all these now established characters that we have from Phase 4. So, where we lacked in Phase 4, we're definitely going to make up for in Phase 5, I think.
I had a thought, and I totally blanked on it. But it was something to do with Abomination. I think it was back to like him potentially also being a Skrull because of... I don't know, I just wouldn't be surprised if he's also a Skrull. That's where I'm going to.
Right. I do see that aspect because he seems so different than the Incredible Hulk, Abomination. But at the same time, we've already talked about that, like in previous episodes and this episode. Like, it makes sense that he's disassociated what all happened in Incredible Hulk from now. So, right, like I think
how did he gain control of Abomination?
That's interesting.
Without the technology that apparently Bruce Banner had to use, and they also said that they had an inhibitor to put on him. So do they already have this? Because they also mentioned this episode when the guy who was suing the elf for, basically taking his money said, I just wish there was something that you could, stop something. Yeah. Like it was foreshadowing.
And she makes a point of like, talking directly to the camera, breaking the fourth wall. Like, hey, I just got an idea. Like, so something's coming down the line. And as far as like depowering, inhibiting powers, something to that effect.
Registration.
Civil War 2.
Yeah, they're building it. They're building it.
Avengers versus X-Men. All sorts of things coming down the line here, guys. But yeah, I also would be fine with him not being a Skrull, and that's just like how he is now. So,
in all fairness, after 8 years, he could have.
Right.
Maybe it's like those ears like the ear things are what people talk about. It's like, well, that could have like just been something that eventually just happened.
Yeah. Well, time. Yeah. And we see the first appearance of Abomination in the Incredible Hulk. So like, yeah, maybe he mutated or evolved somehow.
Still
a little
growing
bit.
Or something. Yeah.
Right. And to that, speaking to that. So obviously everybody knows the Hulk like mythos is like, when he initially starts out, like he becomes the Hulk and he doesn't remember anything that happens as the Hulk when he goes back to Bruce Banner. In the Incredible Hulk, we see Abomination be completely coherent when he becomes Abomination. Like he knows what's happening. He knows what he's doing. He's not like completely out of it like the Hulk is. Like the Hulk doesn't take over. Abomination doesn't take over. It's still Emil Blonsky.
Yeah.
But at that time, he was like kind of, you could kind of say he was hell bent on like completing his mission in the Incredible Hulk.
That's
like,
what he was getting paid to do.
He was getting paid to do that. Also,
and he went way overboard,
way above and beyond. Exactly. So, but he retains that consciousness as Abomination. So that kind of like I think that even is a nice little callback to, when he becomes the Abomination in She-Hulk is a callback to how he stays conscious as Abomination in the Incredible Hulk. Maybe that's just a coincidence, but I thought that was kind of an interesting parallel. So, but yeah, I thought this episode was incredible, hilarious. I can't wait for more of this show. Honestly, I'm really, really digging.
It's gonna be sad when all 9 episodes are done.
Yeah, dude. And see, that's one of the biggest complaint that I've had in a lot of these episodes or a lot of these series, the Disney Plus series, is they try to cram this storyline into these just tight windows, and they're not telling the story as well as they could be because they're trying to like rush things, it seems like. And so far, they're not doing that in this series. So I hope that continues. We get an extra 3 episodes to tell that story. Shorter episodes a little bit, but again, I'm enjoying the episodic nature of the show. But I think they're going to be able to wrap this one up a little cleaner than they have some of these other Marvel series. And
we'll be just like weeks away from Wakanda Forever. So
yeah, dude.
They're doing us solid by not making us wait long for the next Marvel thing.
Oh my gosh. I'm so pumped for Wakanda Forever. That's going to be wild.
And next week, Thor Love and Thunder will come on Disney Plus. So
yeah, a lot of big things coming down the pipeline here in the Infinity Bros podcast. Also, we're going to probably be doing some Rings of Power review episodes, maybe a solo premiere episode. We'll see what the schedule looks like coming up. But yeah, like I said, big things. If you guys want to tell us,
we'll have to go back
thoughts.
to 3-hour podcast and we did the talk about all the
yeah,
content
for real.
Back out.
Oh my gosh,
Scott will be so mad at us.
He's like, I can't do this, guys. I can't listen to 3 hours.
It's too long.
Oh man,
you got a whole week.
Just break it up, Scott. We'll put chapters out there for you. How's that sound? Anyways, if you want to tell us your thoughts on She-Hulk episode 3, you can join the Infinity Bros Discord and have a conversation there. Email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com, or you can check us out on social media to tell us what you think. So, Mark, thanks so much for joining me today. It has been a fun time hanging out with you.
I'm glad I was here today to be with you, and I hope we do it again sometime. I had a fun time.
Oh, just gave me butterflies there. Oh, it's fun hanging out with you, Mark. We might have to do this again sometime. All right, until the next date of Mark and Isaac.
Until next week on the Infinity Bros podcast.
Oh, I love it. And thank you, Infinity Bros Universe. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your day. We love you 3000. Make sure you have a great night, day, weekend, wherever you're at right now. We love you 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.
I sometimes think when we say that I just imagine it's 20 years from now, someone is listening to our podcast and they're like in a bunker because there's some zombie apocalypse going on. But they just happen to have, for some reason, wherever they are, have like a bunch of like someone recorded on a phone they found. Like
they actually have like an MP3 with the physical, like an MP3 player, like not even a name brand one, just like a generic MP3 player with actual MP3 files of the Infinity Bros podcast for some reason.
Someone was like, and it's like in someone's bunker. It's like, I'm going to be listening to this stuff.
Like, I have hours of podcast material to listen to when I'm stuck in my bunker in the zombie apocalypse.
Some poor sap is like listening to this. Like, this is their only entertainment.